Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Reggie and I'm a late diagnosed autistic person, and I make videos about what that is like for me. So today again I have my bandana on because I just came from a horse lesson, so it went pretty well today. So yeah, this video is going to be a little bit difficult for me to make because I don't know, I'm just feeling incredibly overwhelmed and incredibly, I don't really know what the word is for what I'm feeling. That's one of my issues too, is that I do have some alexithymia, so it's hard for me to describe what I'm feeling, especially in the moment. So, but there's definitely a lot of unsettledness in my spirit, and I'm feeling completely wiped out physically as well. Like really, like I feel like I got hit by a truck. And the reason I'm saying this is because the topic of this video has to do with that. So I don't really know how I'm going to title this video because I can't really think of an appropriate title for it. So hopefully I'll come up with something that'll make you guys want to click on it and listen to it. So let me just try to get into it. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. So I want to make this video about communication issues that I have as an autistic person. And I think this is really important because I think that a lot of neurodivergent people will identify with this. If you do, please comment below because I want to know how you guys feel about this and how it affects you. Okay, so let me just try to get into it. So one of the criteria of the DSM for an autism diagnosis, it says we're supposed to have deficits in communication and in reciprocity in communication. And I understand where they're coming from, where they say that. And yes, there are lots of autistic people who do struggle with that. That is definitely true. So I don't want to negate that, or I don't want to dismiss or dishonor autistic people who really truly do struggle that way. But there's another side to that whole issue, and that's what I want to talk about today. I've had several conversations today and throughout my life, and I seem to be having these kinds of conversations every time I talk to almost anyone at all, especially when it's to non-autistic people. And because of the effects of these conversations, I have had to isolate myself more and more to protect myself from the effects of these conversations. And that's really been challenging because isolation has its own issues, its own challenges, and that will be the subject of another video. I'm actually in my car in a park right now, so I don't know if you guys heard the motorcycles that just drove by, but there was a little bit of traffic here, so I apologize for noise that might come through this recording. But anyway, so what I've been struggling with is in conversations, there are certain things that seem to come up a lot that cause me to really be affected. One of those things is when I'm trying to explain something about myself, about my own needs, my own disability, my own knowledge about how I work and the kinds of things that I need as far as accommodations in order to help me to function better. I've noticed that a lot of neurotypical people in particular, and I think there are some autistic people that have done this as well when I've talked to them, but mostly I have found this from neurotypical people, is that I'll say something, and rather than actually hearing what I'm saying, they will hear certain buzzwords in the conversation. They will latch on to those buzzwords. They will have an emotional response to the buzzword, and then they will respond emotionally to the buzzword and completely miss everything that I have said. And then when I try to correct them and explain what it is I'm actually saying, they insist that they understand, which their response showed that they clearly did not understand. And then they tell me that I'm being argumentative. And then oftentimes I get reprimanded for being argumentative. And in all of this, they never hear what I'm trying to say. They never understand the issue that I'm having. They never understand the accommodation that I'm asking for, that I need. And then the fact that they are reprimanding me for their emotional response to what they think they heard or think they understood completely destroys me. And then I can't recover. And this is how most of my conversations will go. And this is really overwhelming because I am trying to get people to understand me. People tell me all the time, oh, you have to understand that people don't understand you. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to, be patient with them or be graceful with them because they don't understand you. And you have to understand that they don't understand you. Well, I do understand that. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that understands that better than I do. But when I try to explain to them so that they can understand, they don't allow me to. They don't accept my explanation. I had a conversation this morning that was so hurtful to me because of that exact scenario. I ended up having to call 988. And if you don't know what 988 is, it's this new suicide crisis prevention hotline that is supposed to be better than the other ones. Well, it's not. I've called it before. I've called plenty of hotlines before when I've been needing help to process whatever I'm trying to process. And I usually get very similar responses from these hotlines. So I was so distraught by this conversation because I really was trying to explain something to the person I was talking to, and he just didn't get it. He thought he had gotten it, but he hadn't. And when people tell me that they understand what I'm saying, and I know that they don't, because the response that they gave me shows that they didn't understand. I still have to be patient with them. I still have to have grace towards them, and I have to back off and let them believe that they understood when I know they didn't. Because if I try to explain myself further, I then get blamed for being argumentative or being aggressive. And I just can't. I mean, I don't know. It's like, what do you want from me? I just can't do this. You know? And it's so overwhelming. I mean, it literally shuts my brain down. It makes me unable to function. There have been times where this has shut me down so significantly that I've stopped breathing. You know, and it's not an anxiety response. It's just, if you shut me down so severely, so completely, my brain stops working. I can't function. I actually, sometimes it'll be so bad, I will lose critical functioning, like being able to breathe or being able to move or being able to eat or being able, it just completely stops me. It stops my body from working, stops my brain from working, because my brain is so taxed with trying to compensate and make some kind of sense out of what's happening, because there's no logic in it. And so the consequences for me can be really severe. And I think that I'm not the only one who has these kinds of consequences. I think mine might be a little bit more severe because of the situation I explained in my last video. I don't have a psychological or emotional protective shield, but so that can cause these conversations to be critical. And so I don't really know what to do. And what it does is it creates a learned helplessness. Because if people make it impossible for you to explain your own self, because they're so reactive, they don't just slow down. They don't take the time to really listen and really understand what you're saying. They just immediately react to a buzzword or to some kind of body language that they think they saw that I don't even know that I made, or some kind of expression that I don't even realize happened. I can't do anything about that. I mean, all I can do is suffer the consequences. And because I don't have this protective shield, which is what I talked about in the last video, I will be suffering the consequences of these conversations for the rest of my life. And the more that I have them, the weaker I become, the more vulnerable I become. And that affects every area of my life. I mean, I'm now getting to a point where I wake up in the morning and just the act of just physically waking up is so overwhelmingly draining that I am wiped out just trying to stand up and get out of bed. I mean, it can be that bad. So that is a situation where I really struggle with having conversations with people, because there's nothing I can say about myself that isn't challenged. I found out, some medical news that is challenging, and I was explaining that to someone, and the person turned around and challenged me on that. I was like, are you kidding me? So, and this is something that happens constantly. I was talking to a cousin of mine whose son is also, she has an adult autistic son, and she and I are very, very close. And we've gotten to know each other very well. And one of the things that she was saying to me is, when I talk to people a lot, I come across as really aggressive and really strong and intense. And I think people misunderstand that. They misunderstand that, and they claim that I'm being argumentative, or they claim that I'm being aggressive. That is absolutely not true. And I think a lot of us have that situation where that happens to us. My problem is that the world I live in, my existence is so intense. Everything in my life is intense. Everything I feel is intense. So intense that it can literally incapacitate and cripple me. So because everything in my world is so strong and so intensely felt, that is just how I am. It's, when I speak, I sometimes speak with intensity because, I mean, that's just how I experience every single thing in the world, every single thing in my life. And it's very difficult for me to not be intense, because that's not normal for me. It's not a normal existence. And so people will often think, oh, I'm being argumentative, or I'm being aggressive. I am the least aggressive. I can't even defend myself. I mean, if you came up and attacked, in fact, last year I was physically assaulted and battered, and I could not even defend myself because I have no ability to do that. That is how unaggressive I am. But yet, because my tone can be strong, people will often tell me I'm being aggressive, or I'm being argumentative, and they'll reprimand me for that, or they'll, and when they reprimand me for that, it destroys me. It actually destroys me, because I'm very passionate, and I'm just trying to explain something about my own need or my own life, or I'm trying to get help, or I'm trying to get, I'm begging out for help. I'm begging out for understanding. I'm begging out for accommodation. And I get, instead of getting understood, or people trying to hear me or understand me, they will turn around and just tell me how I'm aggressive or combative or whatever. And then I never get heard. And this is the kind of thing that happens every day. We're told as autistic people that we have to change how we are, how we exist authentically for the comfort of other people. But something that a lot of people don't realize, you may have one autistic person in your life, or a tiny handful of autistic people in your life. If that is the case, let's say you have one autistic person in your life, you're dealing with that one person. So everyone else in your life will be someone whose conversation is suited to your abilities and your needs. Someone like me, on the other hand, it's the opposite. Every single conversation I have, 99% of the time, every interaction I have, every conversation I have, will be traumatic. So people say when they talk to me, oh, it's difficult for them because my tone might be harsh or intense or whatever, or I might be speaking logically and they don't understand logic, and that makes it hard for them. So that's one person. And then they go off and they go with their friends and their family or whatever, and they're fine. Now imagine if every single person in your life that you spoke to or interacted with was overwhelming to you. and then reprimanded you because you were overwhelmed by them. That's how it is for me. I am constantly being reprimanded for my existence by almost every single person in my existence. That is really difficult. So how is it that people think that I could not be intense if this is what I have to endure every moment of my existence? And I think a lot of you autistic and neurodivergent people can relate to when you have to spend 95% of your conversations with almost every single person in your life every day, having to explain and justify your existence. Having to beg and challenge and fight for accommodations that you need simply to exist. And you have to do this every single day. That is not easy. It is so exhausting that it is actually crippling. Devastatingly crippling. But yet, people can't have enough grace to say, you know what, this is an autistic person. I know her life is challenging. Let me just have some grace and try to actually listen to what she's saying and not just react emotionally. Every time I talk to a neurotypical person, I have to have the grace to say this person doesn't understand me. I need to just step back. I need to just try to understand where they're coming from. My theory of mind is outstanding. I am constantly having to make allowances for neurotypicals, saying stupid things, saying emotionally reactive things, saying socially reactive things every single day to me. So I would appreciate it if they could have a little grace as well. Another thing that I find really difficult in conversations, I was telling one of the people where I ride, where I take my horse riding lessons, about the medical condition I just found out, because it's important for them to know about it. And the first thing she said to me was, I don't want you to identify with that. You shouldn't identify with that. I'm like, excuse me, what? And people say that about my autism too. Oh, I don't want you to identify with it. You know, you shouldn't. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, who the heck are you to tell me how I should identify? That is not your right. That is not your place. I can identify any way I choose to. That is my right. But yet, for some reason, non-disabled people think it is their right to tell disabled people how they should identify. I'm sorry, I'm not your child. I am my own person, and however I choose to identify is something that you should respect. And then she said, well, I don't want you to limit yourself. And I'm like, first of all, okay, I appreciate the sentiment. I really do. I know where it's coming from. I appreciate your heart. But that is incredibly condescending. I mean, just shockingly condescending. Can you imagine if I came up to the person, or if someone came up to me and said, oh, they found out they have cancer. And I said, oh, well, I don't want you to limit yourself. I don't want you to identify with. It's like, who the heck am I to say that to them? But yet, when someone has a disability, people think it's okay to say that. It is not. It's not okay to say that. It's just so condescending. It's so rude. I'm sorry. I'm just really like so frustrated because people say stuff like that to me all the time. And I'm like, just stop. Just don't. And then she says to me, I told her, I'm again, I'm trying to be nice and trying to be understanding where she's coming from and appreciative of her heart and sentiment, which I am. And I'm trying to explain to her in a kind, considerate way. I'm explaining to her, well, it's important for me to identify with these things because these things affect every single part of my being, every single part of my functioning, every single part. It's not like it just affects one little thing that I can separate from myself from this issue. I can't separate myself from autism. I can't separate myself from this thing I just found out about. These are things that affect every single part of my being, every single part of my functioning, every single part of my thought process, how my body works, how my brain works, how I think, how I feel. Everything is affected by these things. That is my identity. All of those things, those are the things that make your identity. So basically, she's saying I shouldn't identify. I'm sorry, my phone just skipped. She's saying I shouldn't identify with the things that make my identity. I mean, that's senseless. And then so I was explaining to her, it's important for me to identify these things because I can't manage them without identifying them. They are so intricate in every part of my being and my existence. I can't separate myself and make an identity that doesn't include them. And she says, well, I don't want you to limit yourself. And I'm thinking, you know what? This is just insane. It's like the fact that I'm able to do what I do at all. You really believe that I decide to let my disabilities limit me? Yes, they do limit me. Not by choice, but because of things that I can't control, things I don't have a choice in. When someone tells me, oh, I don't want you to limit yourself, what I hear from that is, oh, I don't want you to use your disability as an excuse to be lazy. I mean, that is just so rude to say to someone, especially an adult. And then I told her, I said, that's not, first of all, it's not appropriate for someone to say that. And secondly, I was like, I don't limit myself. You might think I do because the things I do are, my ability to do things is incredibly limited by the challenges that I have, but I don't purposefully limit myself. I mean, they say that as if we're disabled, we don't have goals, we don't have dreams, we don't try, we don't strive, we don't try to. I mean, can you imagine that? Would you say that to anybody else? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then she goes, well, I just want you to think about it. I'm like, what? You think I haven't been thinking about it for the past 58 years? I'm 57, and you count your first birthday after your first year. So I've been living for over 58 years now. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been thinking about this for over half a century, so you don't need to tell me that. I don't know why people think they need to tell us stuff like that, as if we don't think about these things. I honestly, these things that the people are telling me I should think about, I am forced to think about them every single day, every single moment, when it's such a physical challenge, when I am literally wiped out, physically wiped out, just from the act of waking up and all that entails. I have to go beyond my comfort zone just to get up and walk to the bathroom and brush my teeth. But yet someone's telling me, oh, I shouldn't limit myself. The fact that I can get out there and ski and ride horses and do the things I do, you really think I'm limiting my... wow, it's unbelievable. I mean, the fact... People don't realize that for somebody like me, sometimes just literally walking across a room and breathing are a challenge. So for them to say, oh, I don't want you to use your disability to limit yourself. Wow. I mean, that is insanely condescending and hurtful. So I'm just asking, please don't say that stuff. Just don't. Think twice. If you met someone who had cancer, who had lupus, or who had multiple sclerosis or something like that, is that what you would choose to say to them? I don't think so. I've never once heard anybody say that to somebody who had a situation like that. I actually know a lot of blind people because I'm part of a group that teaches kayaking to the blind. I've never once heard anyone ever say to a blind person, oh, I don't want you to use your blindness to limit yourself. Oh, you shouldn't identify as a blind person. You shouldn't have that as your identity. I've never ever once heard anyone say that. Why do people think it's okay to say it to autistic people? It's just not. So please, just stop. So, sorry I'm a little bit passionate in this video, but hopefully you guys can relate, and hopefully we can have a conversation about this, because I think it's important. And it's tough. It's really tough having these conversations every day, having to justify my existence every day, having to fight just for the right to exist every day. It's definitely difficult. So we don't need non-disabled people making it more difficult with insensitive comments like that. I'm going to go even further and say, unless you really know the person intimately, don't think it's your job to push them. Don't think it's your job to challenge them. Don't think it's your job to make them feel like they need to be better, or that they need to strive for more, accomplish greater things. That person is doing the very best he or she can. And that person is struggling in ways that you can't even imagine. So just be kind. Just be considerate. Just be careful what you say. If someone is trying to explain their disability to you or explain their needs to you, slow down. Don't react. Don't be quick to speak. Be slow to speak, quick to listen. If you hear a buzzword and you hear nothing else, don't respond to that buzzword. Go back and ask them to clarify what they're saying so that you can understand further. Because when you just react with buzzwords or buzz phrases, the trauma it does to that person is really, really difficult, and that person might never get over it. They might never be able to recover from that. And I'm going to say one last thing before I close out here, because this video is getting long. The conversation I had earlier today was so traumatizing that I ended up having to call 988, and the lady hung up the phone. She told me she didn't like the way that I process information. She didn't agree with the way that I processed information. She didn't agree with the way that I was answering her questions. And she said if I couldn't answer her questions the way she wanted me to, she would end the conversation, and she did, and she hung up the phone. So even when we try to get help like that, we are often just dismissed, tossed away, and invalidated. And so, you know, it's just hard. It's hard. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I talked about that call earlier in this video, but my brain is so fried right now, I'm kind of jumbled and all over the place. But anyway, I just wanted to share this with you guys. So just be careful, be kind, be slow to react, be sensitive in what you say. Think about what you say before you say it. Think about the fact that even though that disability might be new to you, it's not new to the person who's living with it. You don't have to tell somebody to think about a concept that you came up with, because they've probably been thinking about that concept their entire life. So thank you so much for listening to my rant. It is very much a rant this time. And yeah, I hope you will subscribe and like, because I could sure use the love. So thanks, guys. Talk to you on the next one. Bye.